You ever been ghosted, ignored, left wondering what the hell happened? Yeah, me too. Let me tell you something about avoidant people. They don't disappear because they don't care, they disappear because they don't know how to. They vanish because closeness terrifies them. They go quiet because silence feels safer than vulnerability. And then just when you've started to move on, boom, there they are, back in your DM, back on your screen, back in your life. Why? Because emotional distance is their comfort zone. But eventually, even they get lonely in that zone. See, when someone has an avoidant attachment style, they're operating from a survival mode. Connection feels like pressure. Vulnerability feels like a threat. So what do? They bolt, they rationalize, they tell themselves they're better off alone. But here's the thing, humans are wired for connection. Even avoidance. And once the emotional fog clears, once the anxiety settles down, the memory of safety, kindness, or love you gave them starts to pull them back. They don't come back because they've suddenly changed. They come back because you're their safe space, even if they're terrified of staying in it. But listen carefully, it is not your job to be someone's emotional rehab center. It's not your job to make space for someone who only shows up when it's convenient for them. You don't need to be flattered when someone who abandoned you comes crawling back. That's not love, that's a pattern. So yeah, the avoidant might come back, but the real question is, are you still the same person who will let them in? You get to decide what kind of love you allow in your life, and if they walked away once, you better believe they can walk away again. But this time, you can be the one who closes the door. Avoidants go quiet not out of malice, but out of fear. Closeness triggers their survival instincts. When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to withdraw or go quiet, it's not usually because they've stopped caring or lost interest overnight. What's really happening beneath the surface is a psychological and emotional shutdown rooted in fear, not hate, not cruelty, and not indifference. The closer they feel to someone emotionally, the more exposed they feel. And for an avoidant, that emotional exposure equals danger. So instead of leaning in, they pull away. It's not logical, it's instinctual. Avoidants learned early in life, often unconsciously, that expressing needs or relying on others wasn't safe. Maybe they grew up in environments where vulnerability was punished, or where their emotional needs were dismissed, ignored, or met with inconsistency. Over time, they internalized the belief that intimacy leads to pain, pressure, or suffocation. So now, even when they find someone who genuinely cares about them, their system reacts the same way it always has, with distance. The moment they feel too emotionally seen, too understood, too connected, their nervous system flips a switch. What should be a moment of bonding becomes, for them, a moment of alarm. They don't trust closeness, not because of you, but because their past taught them to associate it with discomfort, manipulation, or disappointment. Their silence isn't an intentional punishment, it's a protective response. In their mind, pulling away feels safer than engaging, even if it ends up hurting both of you in the process. Here's the ironic twist: avoidants deeply crave connection too. They just don't know how to sit with the discomfort that comes with it. So when someone gets close, they subconsciously fear being engulfed, controlled, or losing their sense of independence. Their mind says, asterisk, if I don't create space, I'll lose myself. Asterisk, so they create space, and sometimes that means vanishing altogether. Not because they stopped loving or caring, but because fear took the wheel. The silence that follows isn't a power move. It's not some calculated manipulation tactic. It's avoidance in its rawest form, emotional self-preservation. It's fight or flight, except for them, it's usually just flight. They ghost, ignore, delay responses, or create conflicts just to reestablish distance. And on the outside, it looks like they don't give a damn, when in reality, they're overwhelmed by feelings they don't fully understand, let alone know how to communicate. Understanding this doesn't excuse the behavior, but it explains it. You can't fix someone's attachment wounds by loving them harder or proving you're safe. Avoidants have to want to understand and heal this pattern themselves. Until then, their silence will continue to be their shield, not against you, but against the vulnerability they're afraid to face. They often return when their emotional nervous system calms, and they remember the safety you once gave them. Avoidant individuals don't always stay gone. In fact, it's a repeating pattern: disappear, retreat, go silent, and then suddenly resurface as if nothing happened. This cycle can be maddening if you don't understand what's really happening beneath the surface. When they pull away, it's typically because their emotional system has been activated, something got too real, too close, too vulnerable, and because they've spent years, sometimes their whole lives, learning to equate closeness with emotional risk, they react by retreating. But that retreat isn't permanent. After enough time, when the pressure of connection has faded and the threat of intimacy feels distant, their emotional nervous system begins to calm. The same connection that felt suffocating a few weeks ago now feels comforting in retrospect. And that's when they remember you, not the intense parts of the relationship, but the soft ones, the laughter, the safety, the way you understood them when they couldn't even understand themselves. Avoidants tend to idealize distance and devalue closeness in the moment. But once they've been alone long enough and the emotional intensity fades, they start to reflect. The silence that once felt safe starts to feel empty. They start to miss the connection, even if they pushed it away before. But it's not the kind of missing that comes from clarity and change. It's the kind that comes from loneliness meeting nostalgia. Their return often comes in subtle ways. A random "Hey, how have you been?" A comment on a story. A meme they think you'll laugh at. It's not just a casual check-in, it's their nervous system testing the waters to see if you're still emotionally available. What's important to understand is that this doesn't mean they've processed their fears or grown past their avoidant tendencies. It just means they feel safe enough again to re-engage because the intensity is gone, and they believe they can now interact with you without facing immediate vulnerability. This is why the cycle can feel so confusing. When avoidants come back, they often act warm, nostalgic, even affectionate. It might feel like they've had some grand realization, like they finally see your value. But more often, it's just that their internal alarm bells have stopped ringing. They're not in emotional overload anymore. They're in emotional recovery mode, and your presence, once overwhelming, now feels like a lifeline. It's not necessarily manipulative, it's more about their internal regulation. You provided a sense of emotional grounding, even if they didn't have the tools to receive it at the time. Now that the storm has passed, they come looking for that grounding again. But unless they've done the work to understand and address their avoidant behaviors, they're likely to repeat the same pattern, reconnect, get close, get triggered, and retreat all over again. So yes, they come back. But they come back because you made them feel safe, not necessarily because they're ready to stay. Their return isn't proof of change, it's a cycle rooted in emotional avoidance and fear of intimacy. When an avoidant person comes back after pulling away, it can feel like a break through, like the space gave them clarity, like they've realized what they're missing and want to be better. But the truth is often far less romantic. Their return isn't necessarily a sign that they've evolved or had some deep emotional awakening. More often, it's just a reset in the same cycle, the same unresolved fears, the same nervous system patterns, the same discomfort with emotional closeness repeating themselves again. Avoidant behavior isn't random, it's a deeply ingrained coping mechanism. These individuals often struggle with a fear of intimacy that gets activated the moment they start feeling emotionally dependent on someone. In their minds, closeness equals risk. It threatens their independence, their sense of control, and often triggers buried fears of being smothered, trapped, or eventually abandoned. So, what do? They push away, they create space, and sometimes they leave entirely. But here's where the loop begins. Once they've been gone long enough to feel safe again, their system resets, the panic settles. The memories of emotional overwhelm fade, and in that space, they start to long for the connection they once ran from. That longing isn't always about you as a person, it's about the relief you provided from their internal chaos. You represented peace, understanding, and acceptance, but instead of returning from a place of self-awareness, they return from a place of emotional comfort, seeking. They don't want to face the work it takes to truly connect, they just want to feel good again. And because this cycle is so automatic for them, they often believe their return is progress. But the absence of fear doesn't equal growth. Feeling ready, again, isn't the same as being emotionally equipped to stay. So what happens? The same pattern plays out. You reconnect, things feel good, emotions rise, and once again, the avoidant gets triggered, the walls go up, the distance returns, and you're back to wondering what went wrong. This cycle can be incredibly damaging for the person on the receiving end. It creates confusion, false hope, and emotional exhaustion. You begin to second guess yourself, questioning whether their return means they've changed, or if maybe you did something to scare them away again. But the truth is, this isn't about you. It's about their internal wiring, the emotional blueprint that says closeness is dangerous and distance is safety. Until they recognize this cycle for what it is, and take real steps to change it through therapy, self-awareness, and emotional accountability, their return will always be temporary. The intention might not be to hurt you, but the impact often is. Without conscious effort, growth, and change, avoidant individuals are bound to repeat the loop. And while they may come back again and again, it won't be because they're ready to build something lasting. It will be because they're trying to feel safe, not because they've truly learned how to stay. It's not your responsibility to heal or fix someone who only comes back when it suits them. When someone with an avoidant attachment style comes back into your life after disappearing, it's natural to feel a mix of emotions: hope, confusion, and even a sense of validation. After all, their return can feel like proof that your presence mattered, that your love was missed, and that maybe, just maybe, things can be different this time. But what often gets overlooked in that moment is the emotional cost of constantly being the one who holds the space, the one who waits, the one who makes room for someone who only shows up on their terms. It's incredibly easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if you just love them a little harder, if you're just a little more patient, if you're just a little more understanding, then they'll stop running. But this is where the emotional burden becomes dangerous, because you're not in a relationship, you're in a rescue mission. You're not being loved equally, you're being emotionally drained by someone who hasn't done the work to show up consistently. Avoidants are often drawn to emotionally safe people, the ones who are empathetic, patient, and emotionally available. But here's the kicker: they seek safety from people they're not prepared to be safe **. They want to experience closeness without dealing with the discomfort that comes with vulnerability, and when it gets too intense, they shut down and disappear. Then, once they feel calm again, they return, expecting you to still be there, waiting, open, and ready to pick things back up. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself playing the role of their emotional caretaker over and over again. But this is not love, this is emotional labor. And no matter how compassionate you are, no matter how much you understand their pain or their past, you are not responsible for fixing what they refuse to face. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity. You cannot give enough patience to rewire their fears. That's work they must do for themselves. And until they do, the cycle will repeat, because what they're looking for isn't connection, it's comfort without accountability. It's important to remember that healing is a personal responsibility. You can support someone, but you cannot do the work for them. And when someone comes back only when they feel ready, but leaves when you need them most, that's not emotional growth. That's convenience. You deserve someone who chooses you not just when it's easy, but also when it's hard. You deserve consistency, not crumbs of affection scattered between episodes of distance. So when they come back, take a moment to ask yourself, are they really ready, or are they just seeking temporary relief? Are they stepping up, or are they falling back into old patterns? Because your time, energy, and love are valuable. And you're allowed to protect your peace from someone who keeps coming and going as they please. You hold the power to break the pattern. Their return doesn't require your acceptance. When an avoidant partner comes back after a period of silence or distance, it can feel emotionally disorienting. You might find yourself questioning everything. Should I give them another chance? Have they changed? Am I being too harsh if I say no? These thoughts are normal because human connection is powerful, and we all long to feel seen, chosen, and wanted. But here's the truth that often gets buried beneath those emotional waves. Just because they come back doesn't mean you have to let them in. You are not obligated to repeat a cycle just because someone shows up again. Avoidants often reappear when they feel emotionally regulated, when the pressure of intimacy has faded, and they feel ready to engage, but this readiness is often temporary and unaccompanied by real self-work. They're not necessarily returning with new tools, new awareness, or new behavior. Many times, they're returning because they're hoping to find the comfort they once felt in your presence, not because they've done the inner work to create a healthier connection. And this is where your power lies. You don't have to keep the door open for someone who keeps walking in and out of it. You don't have to romanticize their return or interpret it as a sign of destiny. In fact, if the relationship was marked by inconsistency, confusion, and emotional disconnection, their return might be less about love and more about habit, their habit of seeking safety without offering the vulnerability it takes to sustain it. Patterns like this only continue when both people participate. That doesn't mean you're to blame, but it does mean you play a role in whether it keeps going or not. Choosing to step away from the cycle isn't cruel, it's an act of self-respect. It's saying, I won't be a placeholder for someone who doesn't know how to hold space for me. Avoidant people are often stuck in a loop they don't even fully understand, and they can only break free when they choose to confront their emotional barriers. Until then, every return is just another lap in the same emotional marathon. But your role doesn't have to stay the same. You get to change the script. You get to say no. You get to stop proving your worth to someone who can't recognize it consistently. When they come back, it's easy to focus on them, what they want, what they say, what they promise, but your focus matters more. What do you want? What do you need to feel secure, supported, and emotionally nourished? If they can't meet you there, if they can't bring the emotional consistency you deserve, then walking away even when they return is not weakness. It's power, it's clarity, it's growth, because in the end, healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes the next time they go quiet and suddenly come back, remember this. Their return isn't your responsibility, and it isn't always a sign of growth, it's a cycle you have the power to break. You are not here to rescue anyone at the cost of your own peace. You deserve consistency, not confusion. Thank you for showing up for yourself by listening today, and remember, protecting your heart isn't selfish, it's smart.